Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Advanced Radionic Workshop Series of the 1994 USPA Conference. This morning, our guest and speaker is Dale Pond, who is a past editor of the Journal of Sympathetic Vibratory Physics, which relates to the works of John Ernst Worrell Keely. He's a writer, lecturer, and teacher. Presently, he's building a super heat pump, which is based on the technology of Tesla, Keely, and others. This morning, he will be dealing with sympathetic vibratory physics and the science of harmony and music set in triune combinations which Keely used to operate his etheric generators. Dale Pond.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm glad you could all come to witness this fantastic week we have here about radionics and vibration theory. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about John Keely, his history, what he did, what we think he did, the 10 years of research that I've personally put into the subject. And we happen to have a motor here with us today that John Keely himself made. It's been sitting in a museum for many, many years. And I'll explain to you how that works. This will be the second public demonstration on how this particular motor works in the past 130 years since it was invented. He kept it a secret, but we're going to give it out now. Also, I'm going to talk about the science and physics of sympathetic vibrations. Sympathetic vibration is a well-known topic in engineering, although it's not used very much. It is very well known about, has been known about for 200 years or longer. John Keely got into the middle of his vibration research, and he discovered that to really unleash the forces in the universe, we have to work with sympathetic vibrations. And I'll talk to you about those and what they are and why they are. They're very much like resonance, but they're not resonance. Very similar to that. Is there anyone in the audience who hasn't heard of John Keely, doesn't know what he did? Quite a few. Mr. Keely was born in 1837 near Philadelphia. As a youngster, he was always interested in sound and music and vibration, things of that nature, especially during church when he saw the windows vibrate when the choir sang. And he got real curious about what caused that resonance in the windows. And that began his long career. One of the most fantastic scientific researchers in history was this man, John Keely, and he kind of got buried. He died in 1898, but that brief period from the 1860s, late 1860s to 1890s, he did an incredible amount of research into vibration, molecular and atomic structures. He worked with radioactivity, or radiation rather, not radioactivity as we know it. It was quite a bit different. His was benign, was absolutely harmless when understood and worked with properly. Several times he blew the back end of his laboratory out, so it can be very dangerous. And he was the expert, and he kept losing it once in a while. In 1872, some investors came to him. He had built the first prototype of this particular motor in the late 1860s. In 1872, some promoters and businessmen in Philadelphia came to him and said, why don't we form a company, a stock company, we'll sell stock and we'll get enough money to develop this motor and bring it onto the market. So that began the time of the Keely Motor Company business, which has a very colorful history. Over a period of 10 years or so, they managed to develop $6 million of investments into the development of this motor. However, most of that money went to the guys who had the stock, which was these business people, and Keely never really saw much of it. He only had enough of it to keep building new machines and older machines. This particular motor operates on water and sound. He made 129 versions of this motor. We don't know which model this one is, although we're pretty sure it was one of the later versions, because it's very, very refined. The one single patent that Keely filed that we've been able to locate was filed in 1874 on this motor, but it was a very crude design. And we have copies of that patent. We have a little bookstore over in the other room where we have all of this material we've been able to get our hands on and is available on that subject. Fundamentally, this motor would draw in water, just plain old water, into itself using a vacuum, and I'll explain the different components to it as we go along. Once the motor got to vibrating, and it would start to vibrate on its own, this water would begin to pulsate. And pulsations in a water stream is called water hammer. When they shut off a water stream, you get this water hammer effect. And that is where an etheric vapor is evolved in the process of water hammer. This is technically known today as cavitation. There's 4 types of cavitation, one of which is called acoustic cavitation, which is what's used in this motor. During the process of a cavitation, or as is sometimes referred to in these circles, implosion is the same thing as cavitation. So you get the imploding of these forces. It's the female force of the ancients. This implosion cavitation is the female force being released in these machines. It has been established in modern engineering. You can find it in any book on cavitation. There's only 2 books on cavitation ever been written that I've been able to track down, and both of them say the same thing. There are infinite levels of energy being released during the process of cavitation, this imploding. When you got the expanded gaseous vapors, when they collapse, that's the implosion. When they collapse in the cavitation process, there is released infinite levels of energy. And all the scientists who've written on the subject claim the same thing again, that they do not know what's going on. They see this thing, they measure it, they photograph it, they've got all these technical studies on it, but they do not understand what's happening. It's totally foreign to the male-based science that we have going on today. This is the evolution and the opening up of the female force that has been occulted in the old metaphysics and the old mystical circles for centuries and centuries. John Keeley stumbled on it, and this was his gallant effort to harness these incredible forces. I believe it was in 1888 or 1889, Keeley decided he was not going to pursue this type of motor development any longer. He figured that he was not able to capture the etheric force and turn it into a motive force, as in a motor, to suit the purposes that they were trying to do. About the same time, a very wealthy lady from Philadelphia, Mrs. Clara Bloomfield Moore, came into Keeley's life in a benefactress, and she told Keeley that if he would stop trying to make a motor, make a commercial enterprise out of this thing, and begin his scientific investigation of this phenomenon that he was working with, she would fund his research, pure research. He agreed, and she funded his work for the next 10 years. Pure scientific research. That's why we don't see any more machines in the head than we've got this one and one other one in Vermont. In 1893, Keeley had finished his study of research. He left the etheric vapor side of it and he went into a new side of it, which I call negative attractive forces. He built a whole class of machines when he left this machine and went into the negative attractive energies. These are the female forces. These are the high vibration forces in these new machines where he could actually, and he did, he built machines where his mind was keyed to the machine. If he thought a certain symbol or a certain word or whatever, these machines would start or they would stop. Only he could start them and operate them. Later on, he devised methods that anybody could operate these same machines, but it was based on mind energy. Eventually, he came to say and to teach us that all force in the universe is mind force, just operating in different realms. All force is mind force. And he tapped into this infinite realm of energy. And we'll go on to explain how that's all tied together. It will also explain a great deal about this radionics research where symbolism plays such a big part. And we say, well, this looks like magic and science can't explain it, they can't accept it. But we do have means and methods now that we can tie these things to conventional engineering where it makes sense. And we'll get into that a little bit too. First, I'll explain this motor a little bit so you have some of the history behind what we're dealing with, and then we'll go into some of the vibration physics.